Welcome back in to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Phil Cauble, Fine Homes and Land. You see the phone number right there. That's how you get in touch with Phil himself, Lickety Split. Plus, you can also learn more about their business and their properties by visiting philcaublehomes.com. Check out this new listing, a beautiful home at the Cove at Turkey Creek. Just one of the many wonderful homes that Phil Cauble, Fine Homes and Land can help find for you and your family. All right, I did want to explain something that I didn't do in the last segment, and that is this right there. These guys weren't Vol for life. They were Vols for a week or two. That's what that meant. Vols for a week or two. All right, what we're going to do is take a look at the numbers to try and get a feel for what Donnie Tyndall's teams have done over the last 8 years. We looked at Morehead State. We looked at his numbers at Southern Miss. We've taken averages. Those of you who follow us during basketball season, these are the same numbers we used with the formula on Conzo Martin's teams, who they want to play, who they wouldn't. All comes from Ken Pomeroy, who is the ultimate in basketball geekery. We will drop these on you at the Nova Copy board. Let's go ahead and take a look over there. You see the numbers, and what we've done is average, and I'll explain what these categories are, but we've averaged where these teams finished nationally. So 1 would be higher, obviously, 350. The closer you get to 350, the worse it gets. We have to show you that, or else you're not going to understand when we simplify everything at the end. So complicated at first, simplified at the end. Stay with us. All right, Chuck, if you can step on in there, we'll start flipping these things over. We've got, well, hold on one second. We got Pearl's first 3 years, Pearl's last 3 years, because there's a big style difference between those two. Martin's full 3 years at Tennessee, and then Tyndall's full 8 years. Okay. What you're going to get here is the first one, adjusted offensive efficiency. Pretty much a straightforward points per possession. Pearl, the first 3 years, UT was incredibly efficient, ranked way up there nationally. 15th is where they averaged. The last 3 years dropped to 63rd in the nation in terms of offensive efficiency. Martin's 3 years were about the same, right at 65. Go ahead and flip Donnie Tyndall's number, and let's see how efficient his teams have been. 165, not quite as efficient as what Tennessee fans are used to in terms of points per possession. All right, now we look at the number of offensive, well, let's take a look at effective field goal percentage. I jumped ahead. That is the same as field goal percentage, but with 3-point baskets counting for an extra point. So basically it takes into account 3-pointers. Pearl's first 3 teams were at 58 nationally. His last 3 at 139. You can see the difference, but without Chris Lofton and Juwan Smith. Martin's team dropped all the way to 176. They didn't shoot a lot of threes. And now Tyndall, let's flip him. You're getting good at that, Chuck. 144. All right, so it's going to be about like Pearl's second 3 years at Tennessee when you didn't have Lofton and Smith, but still better shooting than what you got from the Conzo Martin era the last 2 or 3 years in terms of effective field goal percentage. Now let's take a look at the number of offensive turnovers divided by total possessions. That's turnover rate. How many times you turn the thing over? You see UT has gotten consistently worse over the last 9 years. All right, now let's flip Tyndall. And it's probably going to get a lot worse. They turned the ball over quite a bit. Over the last 8 years, they averaged ranking number 291, his teams did. There are only 350 teams out there, so you will see some turnovers out of this team. All right, a positive, offensive rebounds. This is the number of offensive rebounds divided by total rebounds, those rebounds that give you a second chance for points. You see Tennessee has gotten better over the last 9 years. Tyndall's teams, let's take a look at this, Chuck. Fans are going to like this one. Tyndall's teams, even better, 47. So in terms of rebound, and these teams aren't big. He's had some teams that are small. He's had some teams that are big. They have consistently ranked in the top 20 and the top 10. He's had a couple of teams that finished in the top 3 nationally in this statistic. His teams hustle in terms of on the glass, they get the boards. All right, next one up as we smoke through some of these, free throw rate. How many times does a team get to the foul line? Pearl's teams were consistently average. Martin's teams got to the foul line more often because they worked inside a lot more. Tyndall's teams are kind of in between. Let's go ahead and flip that one. Rank of 129. So they don't get to the foul line a ton, but they do more than Pearl's did. So that's a positive. All right. Adjusted defense. Let's take a look at defense now. Defensive efficiency. How many points per possession for 100 possessions does a team allow? Pearl's and Martin's teams have been good in the top 60 on average every season for the last 9 years. Chuck, show us what Donnie Tyndall's number is. 146. Not great, but average. Not as good as Pearl or Martin, but not bad in terms of allowing points per possession. Along those lines, defensive effective field goal percentage, that's again the three-pointers into the field goal percentage ranking. Pearl's teams were bad at first. Next three teams were better. Martin's teams were on average much better, and Tyndall's teams are much like Pearl's first three teams. So teams can shoot on this group. With turnovers, how many turnovers will Tyndall's teams force? UT was great Pearl's first 3 years, solid his last 3 years, dreadful in Martin's 3 years because they didn't press. Tyndall's teams, they press. They're pretty good. Average rank number 63 out of 350 schools. So you're going to see that's one of the ways they're able to limit points. Mike Strange wrote today that they were 33rd or 31st in the nation at Southern Miss last year in terms of points allowed. You do that by limiting possessions, and part of that comes to right there, steals, turnovers. All right. Next up, we have the opponent's offensive rebounding percentage. Means you keep them off the glass on the offensive end. UT has vastly improved the last 9 years in that field. Tyndall's teams are likely going to be just as good rebounding. Again, his teams hustle. Even when they're not big, they get a lot of turnovers, which is very strong. All right, next up, we have the free throw rate for the opponent. You can flip Tyndall for us there, Chuck. His 8 teams have average being ranked number 266. And Chuck goes diving. This is great. You almost got a tremendous shot there. Be glad the camera was up a little higher. All right, 266, you can see where Tyndall's teams rank. Not very good. In other words, the opponent gets to the line quite a bit against this defense. And then finally, we get to tempo. And of all the misconceptions I've been hearing, this is the biggest. Personally, I don't know why so many UT fans seem to prefer an up-tempo style. I would think it would just be a credit of winning games. But Conzo Martin, there was a lot of complaint about boring basketball. You see there Pearl's first 3 teams. Then they slowed it down the last 3 years. Martin's team played at a Big Ten pace. And Tyndall, almost identical to the same tempo as Conzo Martin. So this idea that it's going to be up-tempo, yes, they will press a little, but it's not going to be as up-tempo as people have said. And if you think now the numbers lie, I went back and found something from the Lexington Herald-Leader when Tyndall had left Morehead State. And here's what it said. Transforming Morehead from the deliberate offense and zone defense successfully employed by Donnie Tyndall now at Southern Mississippi. Sean Woods plans to have the Eagles flying full speed. So don't expect an up-tempo offense. They do press, but it's not an up-tempo offense. It's a little more the speed of Conzo Martin. So what does all this tell us? All right, now you've gone through the numbers. We have to explain those. Here's the basic gist. What does it mean for them on offense? There we go. Tyndall's offensive DNA, if you will. They run a high-low motion offense, like he says, much like Kansas. A lot of ball screens on the perimeter. Tempo, very similar Conzo Martin speed. Not wonderfully efficient on offense. They turn the ball over a lot, but they are fantastic offensive rebounders. On the defensive side of the ball, and as Mike Strange said earlier, this may be where you have your advantages. Not as efficient as Conzo Martin and Bruce Pearl's teams. Poor defensive field goal percentage. However, they create a lot of turnovers. They rebound well on the defensive end. They do give up a lot of free throws, but between the turnovers, Mark, and the low tempo, that's how they're limiting possessions, and that's how they're winding up in the top 40 in terms of points allowed per season. Your thoughts on the styles that we see there?
Well, I think, we automatically start going to the Bruce Pearl type press when you start hearing tempo. It's different. Bruce ran a 1-2-2 press where you're going to trap corners and try to get a bunch of forced turnovers. With his style of press, it's that 2-2-1 kind of three-quarter court where it's like Louisville, where instead of trapping close to the baseline, close to your basket, you're not trapping until the half court. And so it's a different kind of press. I do think the offensive rebounds, that's exciting because to me, that's a straight effort thing. Mm-hmm. That's getting coaches getting his guys to play really hard, which is exciting. The zone, I've talked to coaches that played against him. I've talked to coaches that have went down there. His zone is very unique and tough to manage.
Okay. Don, you're not as big a numbers stat freak as Mark and I. Your thoughts on Tyndall and what we kind of broke down there?
Well, any coach worth his salt, and Donnie Tyndall has proved one thing, he is a winner. So what any coach is going to do, he's going to take what personnel he has available, as Coach Pearl did his first few years. Buzz Peterson left, Coach Pearl with 3 great guards. They're still playing for a lot of money, those 3 guards. People should not forget that. Yep. Bruce Pearl inherited 3 super guards when he came here. But at any rate, any coach is going to take the players he has and he's going to get them to try to play hard. Donnie Tyndall's teams, as Mark pointed out, really play hard. They're going to force a lot of mistakes. Of course, they're going to foul a lot. We saw the statistic about that. But with the shot clock as it is today, nobody can slow the game down. This is not the Ray Mears era, where you're going to take the ball, and you're going to just hold the ball, and you hold the ball and hold the ball. Today, with the shot clock as it is, people have to play a certain tempo. This thing about people not liking tempo, that's a bunch of crap. Because everybody plays the same way. There's no difference. Some people press, some people don't, but they still have to have an offense, that attempts a shot, in just a few seconds. So, this thing about people not liking the tempo, that doesn't rest well with me because, Donnie Tyndall wins basketball games, and when the season's over, they're not going to say, how did the tempo go?
You heard it this year, though. You heard it this year, though. Boring basketball. I think it's silly because, as we pointed out, you look at the scores in the NCAA tournament, they're not 90 to 80. The scores in the NCAA tournament become 60 to 50. Those teams who make it further play a little bit slower tempo numbers-wise. I think that's a positive for Donnie Tyndall, whether people out there, whether some of those folks who want the up-tempo know it or not, I think that's a positive. Mark Pancratz, I'm going to put you on retainer. Hopefully no one will be fired, hired, or anything else. We'll see you again, buddy. Thank you very much. When we come back, I don't know what we're going to do. We're packed full. Come on back on the Sports Source.
You are watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television.